Today's guest is Elizabeth Yarnell. She is a multi-passionate entrepreneur. By day, she's a traditional naturopath empowering people with MS or other autoimmune issues to help themselves improve their futures. By night, she teaches movie-making skills to elementary and middle schoolers through online courses. She would love to share her unconventional story, the passion of empowering people to take care of themselves through knowledge. Please give a warm welcome to ever-blessed Elizabeth Yarnell.
I would like to apologize in advance for the muddy recording and microphone difficulties.
You are a woman of all trades. Like, I've never heard of a naturopath. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Is that how you pronounce naturopath?
Yep.
And what is a CLT?
A CLT stands for a certified leap therapist. And that is someone who is certified or trained in interpreting the MRT food sensitivity test, which is really the gold standard in the world of food sensitivity tests. And as a CLT, a certified leap therapist, I am trained to use those test results to design customized anti-inflammatory diets that are particular for that person. It's called an oligo-antigenic diet.
I would love for the listeners to know a little bit more about the story that I've been referencing to since the beginning of our recording. Elizabeth, just tell us a little bit how you started this journey. What happened for you to move towards this type of path of your career?
Well, it's such a good question because this wasn't what I ever envisioned myself doing. I was an instructional designer and a journalist and working in the film and video industry for a good decade until one night in 1999, I went to sleep as usual and I awoke the next morning blind in my right eye. And I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And that's when I learned that 80% of MS patients will experience significant disability within 10 years of diagnosis. So this was about 2 weeks before my 30th birthday. And I was learning that by my 40th birthday, I would be in a wheelchair, which was shocking and not at all what I wanted. Oh. And when I asked my MS doctors, well, what can I do to make my future better? And they said, well, there's not much. You can take one of these injectable disease-modifying therapeutic pharmaceuticals, which have toxic side effects and very, very low efficacy rates. And they might slow down the course of your disease, but they're not going to make it go away. It's not a cure for it by any chance. And that's all we can tell you. And I said to them, well, what about if I change my diet and my lifestyle and exercise my brain and all these things? And they said, it won't make a difference. You're still going to be on the same downhill slope that everybody with MS and really autoimmunity is on, is this unrelenting downhill slope in life until you get to the bottom where you have severe disability and then you die.
Oh, that is a horrible. No, you definitely didn't put that into your cards for sure.
Well, isn't that the most depressing thing you've ever heard? I mean, I went home and cried for 6 hours after I learned that from my doctor. But it was my then fiance, now my husband of 20 some years, who suggested, maybe my diet might have something to do with it. And I thought, he probably had a point because for the entire decade of my 20s, my staple foods that I kept in my apartment were Crystal Light, Diet Coke, and gummy bears.
Yes, that I do recall from that. I'm like, boy, you're a bump up better than what I eat. I eat Nutter Butter and Arnold Palmer's. So it's like, and that's just like my daily, even if I do eat, it's like one meal a day and maybe a shake because I just can't be able to make anything else because I'm just so busy. But it's amazing how it'll escape you because it just becomes part of your norm and you just, put it aside. As long as I'm eating something, I'm okay. As long as I'm eating something, I'm okay. I'm not starving myself. I don't feel like I'm starving myself, but it's like I've had issues where I completely forgot to drink water for the past 3 days. I'm like, now what's going on with me here? All of a sudden I'm a little dizzy, I'm lightheaded, and I don't feel good. Well, oh boy, behold, I forgot to drink water. And I've actually put myself in the hospital a couple of times because of it. I'm like, the simplest things you would think of, or the things that you think that you'll get around to eating that meal and eating, something more balanced, but your life is so busy that what the most important thing in life is to feed your soul and feed your body and your mind. And it just kind of gets to the wayside because everybody else's priorities are before yours. So I know, coming from a mother yourself here, that's probably the situation that you have gone through many, many times, and you are just completely just absent-minded about your well-being.
No, you're absolutely right. And in fact, I mean, from the decade of my 20s, when I lived alone, I either ate fast food, or I ate restaurant leftovers, or I just simply skipped the meal. It just wasn't that important to me. And you're right, but that's probably what led me to tipping over into autoimmunity, and it wasn't a very healthy way to live. And that's really what I had to learn when I was diagnosed with MS, is how do I find a way to live that is more nourishing for my body, not just my social life.
It's amazing how we fall into those situations and completely just like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know that would be related to, the cause and effect, the relations between our diet and the outcome, having these particular symptoms. And, that's something that I've struggled with a lot. If something happens to you, what happens to your kids? And I've always, that's almost like a mantra. If I don't take care of myself, who's going to take care of my kids?
There's a lot of pressure on you for sure to pay attention, because that is what I really started diving into, was how does what we eat affect how we feel and function in our world? And even as the daughter of doctors, this wasn't something I had been taught, and which isn't a surprise because doctors don't really learn anything about nutrition or healthy eating in medical school. And in fact, many doctors will tell you it doesn't matter what you eat, but it absolutely does. And the human body is full of all of these chemical and electrical reactions. And in fact, there's something like 208 chemical reactions that are happening every minute in our body to allow us to do things like see or talk or walk or even feel anything. So all of these things have to happen. And all of these actions need the right minerals, the right vitamins, the right nutrients in order for all the different pieces to come into place and for things to work the way they should. So we're not even talking about inflammation yet, which disrupts everything.
Right. Oh, yes. And as he gets older, a serious issue. As women progress in age, we go through many stages of our hormones fluctuating, and outside of all of that, because I know that inflammation will play a part in making it more uncomfortable for our stages in our life. But like you said, that it's the food that's connected, the types of food that we put in our bodies does trigger inflammation. And of course, amongst other things, if you continue down that path, then you don't change it. And I'm glad to have you here, because you're able to give us at least some type of advice, and also some more questions about you, because I know that I want to get to know a little bit more about you as well. Outside of you being a naturopath in a CLT, as well as a director of the Fight MS with Food project, that I definitely want to dive into. This became your chosen field after the fact that you had gone through this, and from your own personal situation, that something needed to be changed. And a lot of this is not being discussed about at all. And I'm glad you were able to stand up and talk more about that. It's more than just having to exercise and have good sleep and all of that, the normal things that we are supposed to do for our body, but it also is what we put into our body as well. So If you could answer this question for me, please. What is a naturopath? Could you tell me?
So I am a traditional naturopath. That means that I don't work with pharmaceuticals, I don't do diagnoses, and I don't do surgeries. So there is something called a naturopathic physician, which is kind of a hybrid between naturopath and allopathic doctors. And they do all of those three things, as well as what the foundation of my practice is, which is using natural protocols to help people heal by focusing on the root cause of what is disrupting their bodies. So most, if not all, symptoms are due to inflammation. So my focus is really on inflammation. And I know that if we can identify the triggers that are causing inflammation in a person's body and remove those, then that inflammation will recede and many of their symptoms will just go away because there won't be that inflammation there. It's kind of like how when celiac sufferers discover what's wrong with them and they take wheat or gluten out of their diet, they feel much better and they live a pretty healthy life, just like normal people, as long as they stay away from wheat. But I use very sophisticated food sensitivity testing to show me exactly what the problem is for everybody. And honestly, I've never tested anybody who just had wheat as a problem. Many people do have wheat as an inflammatory issue, but not everybody. And nobody has just wheat as a problem.
Because I myself, I think I've mentioned it a couple times, that I myself have been vegan for over 20 years. So one of the things that had triggered me onto this path, being a vegan, was because of the food sensitivities that I had. I decided to eliminate meat products. Specifically, I have not eaten meat in, my gosh, since the 90s. And so at first I was a pescatarian until I became fully a vegan. But there was a time even before that I had a lot of irritable bowel syndrome issues. And I tried to figure out what it was. And at first I went through all those tests, like just a normal general physician doctor who ran all those tests, let me drink all that weird stuff, go through the little x-rays and find out what's going on with my gut. And they could not find anything wrong with me. And they said, well, the good news is that you don't have any polyps or any types of ulcers, so you're good to go for the next 10 some years of your life. You don't have to come back. You have a good, clean bill of health. And I'm like, but I'm still hurting. What's going on? And after I did my own research, I noticed that dairy was an issue. Eggs were an issue. Animal fat, animal meat products were hard for me to digest. Constantly in pain, just excruciating. It felt like, I don't want to compare it to that, but like endometriosis kind of a feel. It was just extremely
Which
painful.
is also inflammation, right? Because anything
Right.
that ends in an osis or an itis, that means inflammation.
Right. And so it was just like unbearable for me. And as I started eliminating things, it wouldn't trigger it. It wouldn't trigger the inflammation. But yeah, that's something that I had to deal with. And this is a process of elimination after I found out. But if I had known that there was a particular test out there, I would have to go through many, many years of excruciating pain to find out like what is wrong with me, So it was just interesting to find all of that out. But
I love that you used your intuition and were able to identify a lot of your own triggers. Good work. I talk a lot about that because that's a great first step. I mean, the food sensitivity test that I use, the MRT, is not cheap. So being able to suss through some things on your own is a lot more affordable for sure, and can get you on a better path. My only concern is, as a vegan, is that you make sure you get enough of the nutrients that you need to nourish your body. And if you're you're vegan and you're eating Nutter Butters, that's not necessarily a nutrient-rich food.
Oh, of course.
Just saying.
Oh no, for sure. I respect that, because I know I should be slapping my own hand, like, you should know better. But there is
Well,
times.
and into every life should come some dessert, for sure. I am a big believer in treats and things like that. But you want to make sure that you're also not becoming deficient in other things, and that the treats that you're choosing aren't full of all kinds of chemicals and other nasty stuff that is part of our toxic food system.
Yeah.
It
But it
can
was
be very overwhelming. It can get to the point where you're like, what is safe to eat?
exactly. I feel like I just might go ahead and revise my visa, and just, that's the only solution that I have to do right now, just because I'm like, we are the only place in the whole, internationally, that a lot of the things that we are eating here in the United States are completely banned there. So I'm like, you know what, just process of elimination. We'll just go ahead and just update my visa. Let's just get it over with. But outside of that, while waiting for my visa to be renewed,
yeah, the reason for that is because we have to remember that the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, is not in existence to protect consumers, the American public. It is in existence to promote American business. So that's two different missions.
Yeah. Oh, completely. What is the best piece of advice you've received in your career or personally on your journey?
So the best piece of advice I received was to let go of the little things. So the little things in life that get you so infuriated, but really are not that important in the grand scheme of things. Just let them go. That might be keeping a spotless house. Like, you know what? You can keep a clean enough house. You don't have to have it spotless and be ready for a photo shoot every day of the week. It might be it might be utilizing some prepared items from the grocery store when you're making dinner for your kids, not having to cook every single thing from scratch every time, just making sure that you're judicious and you choose wisely what you're going to do. But, if you get a bag of baby carrots, that's a great little trick to make your food preparation easier, things like that. So I know that when I was first married, one of my big stressors was about keeping a clean house and getting my new husband to pick up after himself and pick up his socks and things like that. And when I received that piece of advice to let go of the small stuff, that was hugely helpful and allowed me to go forward in a more harmonious relationship without always being angry about the things he wasn't doing that I thought he should be doing. In my clinic, I spend quite a bit of time with my clients working with them and leading them through so that it does making those kinds of lifestyle changes or priority shifts doesn't feel quite so overwhelming. A lot of it is mindset, and it's very funny. I used to think, oh, mindset, that's just total bunk. I don't really care about that. But it really can affect everything and how your mindset is and those, whatever that little voice is inside your head that's talking to you, and how mean that voice is when it talks to you, and how critical, and then how much you can evaluate the right paths and be able to implement them in an easier way because you have those tools.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it, because I'm glad that someone is like confirming that it's not just me that has gone through that, and I'm glad that you're able to help with your clients on that as well, shifting their priorities into something that is more beneficial. And yeah, that's awesome. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Now, what accomplishment are you most proud of?
That's such a hard question to answer, but I can look back and say that I am most proud probably of writing and publishing my cookbook. And part of that was receiving a patent on my cooking method. So I actually invented and patented a cooking method, and then wrote and ended up self-publishing a cookbook that I sold did really, really well. I sold 15,000 copies on my own, and then I got picked up by Random House, and they republished it under the Clarkson Potter imprint, and now I've sold more than 60,000 copies.
Oh my gosh, congratulations.
Thank
Wow,
you.
wow, wow. Yeah, I'm a book reader, so I definitely need to have that link if it is available. I would love to put that in the show notes as well, if that's
And
okay.
yes. In fact, if we want to put in the link glorious, GLORIOUS, 1ONE, pot meals with an S.com. Anybody who's listening is welcome to go there, and you can download my ultimate checklist for stocking your freezer or pantry for quick, easy, and healthy eating any night of the week.
Awesome.
I really believe that part of the stumbling block is not having the food on hand and trying to figure out the last second, what are you going to eat when you don't have any food in the house? So I'm a big believer in let's stock your house and let's have at least foundations of meals, whether that be rice or pasta or frozen or canned vegetables or frozen things like frozen chicken breasts, things like that. Have them around so that even if you have been out of the country for 3 weeks, you can still come home and pull together a glorious one pot meal out of wholesome whole foods that will be absolutely delicious and healthy for your family.
Oh, that's awesome. Awesome. I am so excited because I definitely want to share this, as well as I want to look into that link as well, because I know that I think 85% of my grocery list is nothing but my kids. And maybe I might put in something in there for me. And it's like I'm always kind of putting myself last when it comes to that. Like, as long as the kids are eating, that's fine. And then I'll maybe put something in there for me. And I need to stop thinking like that, because I'm going back to that same circle if I don't take care of myself. But yeah, thank you very much. I would love to see that link.
The idea of glorious one pot meals is that you can create the meal that you and your kids want to eat. And it's super, super easy. While there are over 100 recipes in the cookbook, the intention is not that you follow any one recipe exactly. It's that you get inspired. So maybe you're inspired by a recipe that says salmon with jasmine rice. And you're like, okay, well, I'll make this with salmon. Or maybe you don't want to make it with salmon. You could make pork tenderloin with jasmine rice. You could make chicken breast with jasmine rice. You could make tuna steaks with jasmine rice. It doesn't matter. Every protein is substitutable for any protein, any carb for any carb, and any veggie for any veggie. Mm-hmm. So the concept is that you learn the technique, and now you have this method in your back pocket that you can pull out anytime. Look in your freezer, look in your pantry, pull out what you have, throw things together, put it in the oven, in about half hour, 45 minutes, dinner's ready.
Wonderful. Yes, thank you. I am like, I cannot wait to have this podcast drop. That's for sure. I really want to share this for all the world to listen and to enjoy your book, as well as the links that you are providing for us. So thank you so much. Now, I know that we have kind of discussed about the different types of, I'm not sure if there was anything else that I might have missed out, but is there a subject that you'd like to hit on?
The two other main subjects that I like to talk about are food sensitivities and hidden parasitic infection.
Yes. Should we need to identify some food sensitivities that cause migraines, fibromyalgia, irritable, and autoimmune disease, etc.? And I did have that jotted down, like, we should talk about this. Yes, let's do that. Can I ask you one more question? Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay,
of course.
Cool. The last question was, what is the single most important talent you would like your children to have?
My goal with raising my children is to raise people who can make good decisions and who want to leave the world a better place than how they found it. So that all encompasses being a good person to other people, taking care of the planet and the environment, and being aware of how their actions affect others. So that is my single my single driving factor with being a parent, is to raise children who are good people who make good decisions.
Yes, yes. I think that's a well-rounded thing that a mother wants for their children. And I have the 3 boys for myself, so I just want to make sure y'all keep it, or either get it this world better than you coming into it, because these previous generations have really did a number on our earth. And if you can find a way to improve it, because I am doing my side, but it's not enough. So if my children can do a better job and just find a way to invent something where we don't have to use these types of fossil fuels, and find ways to clean up the environment. I mean, water is life. I follow my brothers and sisters from the indigenous community. And I mean, they have been always spot on as to fight for the resources that Mother gives us. So yeah, this is, I'm a little flustered with that. And I agree.
Yes. I mean, Mother Nature is really who we should just all be worshiping and paying attention to. But even beyond that, talking about the oil that we're using, but it's been put into all of our food products. Our food supply has just, especially in America, has just been contaminated. And our bodies did not evolve on this planet to process a substance that came from 2-3 miles underneath the Earth's surface. And so there is no reason why our food supply should contain all of these petroleum products. Food dyes and colors, for example, they were originally brought before the FDA in around the early 1930s. And at that time, they were sourced from coal. And now they're sourced from petroleum. So anytime you see a food item, and it's so bad for the kiddie market, isn't it? Because all the kids' food is just brightly colored, but that's all petroleum products that we are putting into our body. And nobody is monitoring to see how much is too much and how much any one person is getting in the average day. So it is buyer beware. You must read your labels. You must pay attention. You must educate yourself to stay healthy.
Coming full circle in regards to the food sensitivities, I would love for you to share us a little bit more in regards to that, like the connections between our eating habits, the types of products that are put into these additives or put into our food are correlated to the types of disorders and issues that come around, for us.
So I wish I could say, everybody who is diagnosed with multiple sclerosis should avoid benzoates or something like that. It's not that easy, because each person, each human being is a unique individual, and each person's microbiome is absolutely unique, and their sensitivities are based on their own genetics as well as their environmental history of their lifetimes. So my best advice is to try to stay away from anything you can't pronounce on a label. Read labels religiously. Stay away from artificial flavors, artificial colors, artificial sweeteners, all these things that are not real. One of my mantras is whole foods are better than processed foods. And if you try to stick with whole foods, you can be pretty assured that you're eating cleanly, actually.
Absolutely. And also you wanted to talk about the parasitics or parasites. I'm not sure, I might be saying it incorrectly.
No, you're right. Hidden parasitic infection. The CDC estimates that 7 out of 10 adults are carrying around a load of parasites in their body. Parasites, their job of a parasite is to find a host, move in, take up residence, and populate and live happily ever after. And unless you address the parasites directly with, I think the best thing to do is an herbal parasite cleanse. They're just going to stick around and continue on. And the human body is designed not to appreciate foreign invaders of any kind, whether that's a bacteria or a virus or a parasite. And parasites, we don't have any internal tools or weapons to destroy parasites. You have to address them directly, externally. So it's super, super easy to pick up parasites. You can pick them up from swimming in a lake or a river or even a public pool. Chlorine doesn't necessarily get them all. Water parks, things like that. You can get them from walking barefoot in some areas. There's a parasite called strongylines that will come up through the soles of your feet. You can get them from eating produce that hasn't been washed carefully enough before it was cut into. Right now, the CDC is trying to track down an outbreak of cyclospora that maybe is coming in through fresh cilantro. You can think of how frequently you've seen that on a menu or on a restaurant plate. You can get parasites from digging in your garden, from playing with your pets, from changing the kitty litter, they can be carried by parasites or ticks. Lyme disease is a parasitic disease that comes from ticks. So it's just really easy. It has nothing, there's no personal stigma attached to having parasites. It's nothing to do with your own personal hygiene. Doesn't really even have that much to do if you're in a developing country or what we consider to be an industrialized country. Really, really easy to pick up parasites. From eating sushi, you can definitely get parasites, or undercooked pork. All of these ways are easy. At one point in the 1990s, the entire city of Milwaukee was infected with cryptosporidium through their municipal water supply.
I remember that because I lived there at the time. I lived in Milwaukee, Wisconsin for 25 years. And
oh my God, you're the first person who's remembered this when I brought it up.
Cryptosporidium at the time, I believe I was 14. That was 30 years ago. So I'm 44. Yeah. So I remember at the time I did not like water. For some reason, I didn't like drinking water. I don't care where it came from. I did not drink water. I had my all-time, and here we're talking about additives and colors added to food and products. Hi-C, the limited edition slime Hi-C was my favorite drink. I would drink nothing but that. So when the cryptosporidium hit, I didn't get sick because I was drinking Hi-C.
The one time that Hi-C has
that saved my life.
Didn't they used to send up Hi-C with the astronauts? Wasn't that one of the selling points of Hi-C? Oh, you're right. That was Tang.
Yeah.
My mistake.
It's right up there. So much to say.
But Tang was a powder. You had to mix it with water. So if you were a Tang fanatic, you would have gotten sick.
Yeah. Yeah. I had Hi-C. It was already, water was already added into this big old 84 ounce.
You had to put the little thing on it to open it up. I remember once I dropped one of those cans on my toe as a kid.
Oh my God. All your little bones just said, what's going on up there?
But my dad was a doctor, and Hi-C was a staple in my house too. So it's not like doctors knew any better or still don't know any better about nutrition and what we should be eating.
Yeah. You would think from living in a home full of doctors, or at least a parent that is a doctor, that would be something that they would hand down in resources and information. But my mother was a dental hygienist.
And she still gave you Hi-C.
And I had more cavities that you could think of. And she calls me even now, like she's in her 60s. Like, did you floss and did you brush? I'm like, I floss maybe once a month. She's like, oh my God. I just kind of give her that like shock. And so, yeah, it's like, no, but even though you try to, something like you're preaching it to them. And if it doesn't come from someone outsourced out of your home, you won't accept that information. If it's coming from your parents, you're like, whatever, roll my eyes. So what, that kind of that rebellious teen or childhood. You don't listen to your parents.
It's true. I myself became a regular flosser in college when my roommate was a regular flosser. And she said, the bacteria in your teeth, if you disrupt them every 24 hours, they don't have time to settle in and form plaque. And I thought that was the best explanation for flossing that I'd ever heard of.
Yeah. Yeah, that would have been helpful. It's too late. Got my dentures in. I'm good. No, I was kidding. No, I still have all my teeth. So yeah, thankfully for this time
Yes,
being.
thankfully.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah. So that just brought back memories. That's just amazing. But carry on with your story. I apologize. About the cryptosporidium. I don't know if there was anything else you
Oh, about
wanted.
parasites. So, I myself have been infected with parasites no fewer than 6 or 7 times that I know of.
Hmm.
Starting when I was 6 years old or 7 years old. And several times have been at places out of the country, once in Israel, another time in the Dominican Republic, another time in Sofia, Bulgaria.
Oh, wow.
But also as I said, in Colorado several times, in different places in America. It's just really, really super easy to pick up parasites. One of my most severe times was when my then boyfriend and I went on a 5-week trip to Asia, and we did a 3-week horseback trip across the Eastern Tibetan Plateau. And at the end of the trip, we came down off the plateau into Chengdu, China, and there was a group of 15 of us, and we met at 6 o'clock to go to a beautiful 4-star restaurant for this huge celebratory feast for completing our trip. It was delicious. But by midnight, 13 out of the 15 of us were worshiping the porcelain gods.
Oh, no.
It hit fast and furious. And in fact, several people had to cancel their departing flights the next day. One woman was on an IV in her room for several days. It was pretty intense. And when I came back to Colorado and submitted a stool sample, it made its way to the CDC, and they identified 5 different parasites in my poop.
Oh, my
And the
God.
CDC actually picked up the phone and called me in my apartment and said, "Where have you been? Is there an infestation in Denver?" And I was like, "No, I just got back from Asia." And they were quite relieved, I have to say. But
Oh, yeah.
that was a
Oh,
brutal parasitic infestation.
oh my
So
gosh.
oftentimes I like to remind people that the cycle of a parasite, or the cycle of an infestation, it begins with usually an acute incident. And you may think, oh, you know what? I traveled to Mexico and I got diarrhea, or I had a 24-hour bug, or, oh, I got food poisoning in Thailand or something like that. That may have been the beginning when you were infected with a parasite. And then your body settles into the chronic phase. And in the chronic phase, so many symptoms can turn up or not. Everybody is a little different on how their body handles it. And you can live in this chronic phase for decades. It may just manifest itself to you as constipation or diarrhea, either one, or maybe digestive disturbances, like cramping when you eat, things like that. But it may not have anything to do with your stomach. It may be vertigo. It may be nausea. It could be fatigue. Chronic fatigue can be a sign of parasitic manifestation or infestation. So really, there's no definitive symptoms that would say, oh, 100% you've got a parasite. And even worse, there's no test that will tell you 100% definitively if you have or have not been infected with a parasite. A lot of, or all parasite testing are notorious for false negatives. So if you receive a positive test like I did when they found the 5 buggers in my poop, then you know 100% you got parasites. But if you receive a negative test, there's still a 50-50 chance you could be infected.
Wow.
So I don't even recommend tests for parasites. I think oftentimes just even thinking about parasites might make you start to think, and it might resonate with you. And you should always trust that intuition, that if that's what's happening with you, then you definitely have parasites inside. But even if you don't, there's really no harm done to do an herbal parasite protocol. The one I use is a 30-day protocol, and it's very, very gentle. Starts off super slowly with like 1 capsule, 1 drop of tincture, those kinds of things. I give it to babies when their moms find worms in their diapers. I don't use it on women who are pregnant or getting pregnant. or breastfeeding. But besides that, I've done it myself 4 or 5 times. It's just very gentle and very well tolerated.
Wow. And so I think, I guess in closing, I would love for the listeners to know exactly how they are able to reach out to you for this tincture or any additional information, if that's okay to ask now, or did we have anything else that we'd like to share before we close?
No, I'm so happy to offer to any listener who is interested, if anything resonated with you. If you go to my website at elizabethyarnell.com and you look at the bottom of any page, it's a link and it says book a complimentary naturopathic health assessment. And please, I encourage you to do that. Let's get on a Zoom. Let's talk about what's going on in your body and see if the protocols that I offer could help you feel better, because this is information you're not going to learn from any doctor's office.
Oh, yeah. I'm definitely learning more here than I've learned for many years of going to a doctor's office. So thank you so much, Elizabeth. This has been an honor.
You did a great job today, and I had so much fun chatting with you, Jasmine.
Oh, thank you very much. Very much. Thank you. You have a wonderful weekend. And thank you so much, Elizabeth, for being a guest.
Hey, you too. Thank you for having me on. And it was such a pleasure chatting with you.
Oh, yes, you as well. Thank you. All right. Take care.
Okay. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Noise Zion podcast. And if you enjoy listening to my podcast, please don't hesitate to give me a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. Also wanted to give a shout out and thank you so much to all my guests, past, present, and future. And stay tuned for the next upcoming episode on Fridays.